Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I am Bill, the company's expert, and wow, my camera is bright. Oh man, just like 15 seconds ago, I went into a coughing fit, and I think it rattled my brain. So I'm in good condition to give advice now. But yeah, welcome. This is the weekly live stream where we talk about careers, getting a job, some of the stupidity of how to get a job, and recruitment and selection and all that kind of stuff, and what you're asked to do. I'm going to turn the brightness down on my camera here. This is a interactive Q&A. So if you're seeing this and you're seeing my face, get into the chat. You should see a chat box somewhere nearby. And yeah, I will help you if I can, if you have any questions related to any part of this process. But I want to start off by saying that you're awesome, and I'm not just saying that. If you're going through this process, I wouldn't wish this process on anyone, especially if you're having difficulty getting a job, especially if you're going through what I call standard channels. I've talked extensively about this, but something I've talked less about is that, in my experience, everyone is unique. Everyone is unique. There seems to be a tendency these days to sort of reduce people down to a demographic or, a type of person. But that's crap. When I was leading a company, and before that, you learn that people are unique. They have a unique combination of skills, like their background, experiences, who they are, personality types. There's so many factors that it leads to everybody just being unique, and, if you're watching this, you are unique. You are speaking professionally, as someone who could get hired, could work as an employee, right? Or could work for an organization, right? What you bring to it is unique. And that's not how they regard job seekers these days, for some reason. I don't understand. They claim that they look at people like this, but they don't. And that's signaled through their actions, and the whole thing is ridiculous. I'd like to talk more about this. If people have something to say about it, I think that's a very fascinating topic. It's not talked about as much as it should be. The title of this episode is Ghosting is Ridiculous and Unprofessional. And we're going to definitely talk about that. If you've ever been ghosted, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I've commented often on how a lot of HR people, especially recruiters, how unprofessional they behave towards candidates. And I think it's this magical combination of they're dealing with a lot of candidates, so the necessity to be polite to them and go through protocol and follow etiquette with them really goes down. I think that's definitely part of it. The other part of it is that nobody's calling them on this because candidates are going cap in hand on their knees to these people, looking for a job. And as a result, no one is calling them when they're behaving unprofessionally, when they're essentially incompetent. That's not something that they're regularly called out on. And I remember this myself from going through this process several times many years ago, and that's what I encountered, and it's only gotten worse. So if you are between jobs, if you are encountering this kind of unprofessionalism on behalf of recruiters, hiring managers, and everyone else connected with it, that could even apply to receptionists and office managers too, like anyone you encounter in your journey to get a job. It's really ridiculous, and I'm surprised at the blind spot that people have, the people that are doing this, the blind spot they have for what they're doing. It's really unfortunate. As I said, if you see my face, you should see a chat box somewhere nearby. Get in the chat and let me know what you're wondering about. Let me know what you're struggling with, and I will do my best to help you out. I think YouTube has changed their user interface recently, like in the last few days, where it's even harder to get to things like comments and probably things like the chat, especially if you're on mobile. So I think you have to click yet again to expose the chat box. So if you go through that trouble, get in the chat, let me know what you're dealing with, and we'll get into it. Pearl is here. Hello, Pearl. Pearl has been awesome on this channel, certainly. Pearl's been a participant for a very long time. Pearl says, hello, Bill. Your efforts in knowledge sharing in these podcasts is very much appreciated. Well, thank you, Pearl. That's very nice of you to say. And A. Zain Aldeen is here again. So hello to A. Zain Aldeen. A. Zain Aldeen says, hi there, sir. Well, hi there to you too. Thank you for joining me today. There are 21 of you guys here. Get into the chat. Let's discuss some stuff. What are you guys dealing with? What do you think of recruiters? What do you think of ghosting? Have you ever been ghosted? I mean, it's so commonplace these days. And I'm talking about where the recruiter ghosts you as a candidate. I don't mean the other way around. I'm talking about when the recruiter is doing the ghosting, which I have found to be almost ubiquitous. Somebody posted something and then it was taken away. So either they deleted it or something weird just happened, but my feed went backwards for a second. I've never seen that before. So this is a first for all of us. But yeah, I want there to be more comments and more questions, not less. Yeah, if you've experienced this, let me know. Let's talk about it. I'd like some people to get in the chat. Let me know what you're dealing with. Here we go. Okay, we're back. Anime Sucks says, I have to be honest, I feel a little disillusioned as to what path to take after dropping from business grad school. It took me 8 years to realize I'm not a fan of economics, but I want to do AI art. Okay. That's interesting. Now, okay, the two seem to be completely unrelated. Like business school and AI art doesn't seem to be a lot of commonality there. So I'm kind of looking at it from, I'd like to respond to the first part of what you said, dropping out from business grad school. So you have a bachelor degree in business, is that what you're saying? And you were in grad school to get like an MBA or a PhD in business? Well, if you want, look, if you do want some of the benefit without having to finish the program for like a master's degree or something, you could take my course, right? I offer an MBA course. It's kind of weird calling it a course because it's actually an entire program, just like an MBA is. But it's unaccredited simply because there's no tests, no assignments, no exams, no evaluations. So it exists purely for people who want the knowledge, but don't want to spend 5 figures, don't want to take 2 years and go back to school. If you're just wanting the knowledge to help you in your career so you understand business principles, maybe that's of some use to you. If you've already taken a bachelor degree, you may know a lot of it already. You won't know it at an MBA level, but you'll know a lot. So anyway, it's up to you there. But AI art, hey, if you can put yourself forward for jobs that require that, because I'm given to understand that right now a lot of people are looking for that kind of thing, right? Especially if you can monetize it. Now, you don't need to necessarily be, a job seeker looking to get a job at an employer to make money through AI. I mean, you could take more of the entrepreneurial approach because this is very kind of homespun at the moment. It hasn't really been formalized, standardized, and organized into, a sort of nice, tight, orderly industry. It's still very much a jungle because this stuff is very, very new, and they're discovering new applications for it all the time in terms of like how you can monetize it and your skills in it. So just remember that. Just keep that in mind. If that's the way, especially if you've got business knowledge, right? I don't know how much entrepreneurial experience you have, but there's tremendous opportunity there. I have a live stream every week where I talk about entrepreneurial type stuff. So check that out on Mondays. Anime Sucks says, I have a BA in economics. That's good to know. Yeah, I was trying to monetize it right now. Yeah. I mean, well, like economics or economics, depending on where you're from. It's interesting because it's like the highest level of abstraction for business. It's like the highest level study of business where you're studying the entire economy. And so it gets like, if you think finance is kind of like hocus pocus and abstraction and not really representative of reality, economics takes it to another level. It just like, and we're talking like macroeconomics here, so highest level stuff. So, good to know, but I feel that people that are very strong in economics, they have degrees in economics, I mean, I'm not taken away from that, but I feel that they're operating at too high a level sometimes. They don't understand the practicalities of what actually goes on a little bit lower down. Some of those practicalities determine the reasons why things happen, right? Whereas at a higher level, they're sort of all abstracted and summarized, and you don't really get into it when those details can be all important. But that's just my perspective. Mr. WNFTMY says, your knowledge sharing is very much appreciated. Thank you for that, Mr. WN. That's very nice of you to say. Pearl says, I'm not unfamiliar with ghosting, but what is most surprising to me is being ghosted after recruiters reach out to me on LinkedIn for an opening they have with their client. Oh yeah, I know. I mean, you could be, just be moseying along, minding your own business. Someone contacts you out of the blue about an opportunity. You haven't pursued this opportunity. You're not even aware of this opportunity. They contact you. They talk you into putting yourself forward for it. You may then do some work and send them some stuff or, whatever, go to an interview or a meeting or whatever. And then they ghost you, and it's just like, once again, that exposes the level of disrespect and unprofessionalism. Common courtesy would to be at least say, look, thank you very much for sending me the material I requested. This was for a position that my client had open. It was for this. They've since communicated to me more information about what precisely they're looking for. And unfortunately, they decided to go another path with this. So we won't be proceeding, unfortunately. But I do appreciate you, responding and sending me all the stuff and going to some trouble for, on at my request. Hopefully we'll have a chance to work in the future. I will keep your name in mind for any future opportunities if you would like me to. And this kind of thing. I mean, how much effort does that take? It takes a minimal amount of effort, but people aren't doing it. They would rather risk ruining their reputation with you or your organization or any future organizations you may work for where you represent them for the sake of saving themselves like a literally 2-minute phone call, or an email that takes 3 minutes to compose, something like that, right? And I've heard all the arguments from the other side, like, oh, you don't understand the volume of people we deal with. It's like, yeah, well, if you can't afford to deal with them professionally, that's short-term gain, long-term fail. And if you haven't learned that yet, you will eventually, especially if you are not in a major population center. See, if you live like in New York City or, Mexico City or a place there's like an insane concentration of people, you got millions and millions of people all living together. It's like you can go through candidate after candidate after candidate for years and not encounter the same person. It might take 10 years before you start seeing the same people again, right? But if you're in a smaller area, 500,000 people, like where I am, we've got an island of 0.8 million people, which is the city of Winnipeg, where I'm located. And then there's nothing for hundreds of miles in every direction, essentially. No offense to the little, conglomerations of people there are, but like essentially nothing, for a very great geographic distance. So if you burn your bridges here, it's like, sorry, this is all you got to work with if you want to be here. There isn't an inexhaustible supply of people. And, most locations, most cities and things like that are of that size. So it surprises me when I keep hearing about people doing this. Okay, I want to make sure I didn't skip anyone here. Let's see here. Pro ghosting. Yeah, ghosting is ridiculous. I'd like to get into that more. Pavel says, what's the point of studying economics when these people have all the degrees and yet they can't beat the S&P 500? LOL. Pavel, you make a good point, but the very nature of the S&P 500 or any of the metrics or the economy at large is that you will never be able to beat it. Because if someone could actually beat it, then, and they had like a formula or whatever, then, the game would be up, the jig would be up, right? You're not going to gamble on something if you're sitting at the table with someone that they will always win, right? You're not going to take an opposite position to them if you know that they always win, right? The very nature of these things is that, it's supported by the fact that nobody can outpredict it, right? The moment the stock market or the bond market or the commodities market or any of these international markets, the moment they become predictable, no one will play the game, right? Because it will be the definition of rigged, right? That's built in. So I wouldn't say there's no point to studying it if you can't do it. What you can do is you can play the game and you can work against people who are not down with how things work. They're amateurs, right? You can outmaneuver them, but you can't beat random chance. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not trying to make it predictable. But what you can do is you can do a better job of predicting what's going to happen than other people. You won't be right, all the time. But that's not the point. The point is you will be able to outmaneuver people who are nowhere near as informed or nowhere near as talented as you. And besides, there's a lot more to business than playing these random chance zero-sum games, because that's a lot of what this works out for a lot of people. Unless you actually know how to, I'm speaking with a master's degree in finance here, unless you really know what you're doing, it's like, don't play that game because you'll lose. People are out there to get at you and take advantage of your ignorance. Anyway, I digress. Anime Sucks says, yes, my boss, whom I love, told me there wasn't much application of my economics degree because it was too theoretical. Yeah, your boss might want to tell that to a lot of the consultants for a lot of major corporations that are making more money than you and I will in a lifetime. They're making that in a year. Okay. So of course there's people making money on this. That's what economics is. It's the highest level analysis of the financial world, right? Now, yes, it's like being a rock star. For every one of them that's killing it, you have like 100 people that have nothing but like a bachelor of economics, and they think that will instantly qualify them for a ton of things. No, it's like having a degree in philosophy. It's not quite that bad, but it's the same idea. There are people absolutely killing it with a degree in philosophy. People that have written books, people that give lecture tours, people that have like won the Nobel Prize for philosophy. There's obviously a reason for it if you're really dedicated and you're really going to take it to its limit. But there's people that fail at it, but If there's people that fail at it, is that a reason why you shouldn't even try? Of course not. That's BS. There's a lot of value to economics. You can do a hell of the company that the last company I was with that we were acquired, and I helped do the post-merger integration. They were acquired and they were run by a private equity company. The CEO, the person they picked to be the CEO, had a degree in economics. So of course, everything that, they, every presentation they gave, every, corporate meeting that they attended, they were always referring back to GDP, our growth relative to GDP growth and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's high level stuff, and it's far from useless. I don't have a degree in economics, but I'm just saying, don't listen to fools who someone once failed at this, therefore you should give up your dream and you should give up now. Because if someone else failed, you certainly will. What kind of thinking is that? You might want to look into what they're saying and be smart about it. But that kind of thinking, personally, I don't like it. It's too negative. My answer to someone who said that to me would be, well, look at all the people in your job. I know someone that had a job similar to yours. He just got laid off last week. So you might want to start, getting your finances in order because I don't see bright things in your future. It's just stupid. Pearl says, the feedback I get most of the time from recruiters after reaching out to me when I inquire about the next step is that client hasn't given feedback yet. Yeah, well, that's another kiss off, right? Of course, the client gives them feedback. They say, nope, sorry, not into it. They reject that client and that client. Is the recruiter going to share that with you? No, of course not, because having a conversation with a client about, why they were rejected. Number one, you can't win in that conversation. They're going to get angry. They're going to direct their anger at you because you're the one telling them this, even though you didn't originate the material. It's just, what's the benefit? There is no benefit to them to do this. So if they have to give an explanation, they're going to give the safest, shortest possible answer, which is a kiss off, and they will never actually give you any real feedback. Or if they do give you real feedback, it will not be the whole story. That's pretty much the guarantee. That's how these things work, unfortunately. You have to go to other sources to get feedback on what you're doing. You have to go to friends, family. You have to go to other, people that are more honest. Or if you're an executive, you can pay for that privilege by hiring, an HR company to help you with mock interviews and all this kind of thing. And they will give you feedback on, how you're coming across and maybe what they would recommend you do differently, right? But normal people, you don't need that. That's not necessary to go to those lengths to it. Do mock interviews with friends. If you got a friend that's doing nothing, get them to do a mock interview or two with you, and that will be revealing enough, right? And if you trust your friend, you could maybe even ask them for feedback. Here we go with Pavel. Anime sucks. In response to Pavel, we learned economics undergrad that top firms do not outperform the market. We know the top firms aren't. Yeah, you see, that's the fallacy also of the stock market and economics, is that people are always looking to beat the market. You can't beat the market long term. You just can't by its very nature. You can hope to perform as well as the best companies can to make the smartest possible predictions, but it is driven by statistical probability. That's what finance is all about. It's about, knowing the probability and the risk of different things, and, based on some statistical analysis of, what stock is correlated with the market as a whole and all this kind of stuff, you can do diversification. You can create a portfolio, which is a collection of, not stocks, but a collection of financial assets, shall we say, that perform differently. When one goes up, the other one goes down, and things like this to minimize your risk. But you will never be able to beat the market. Anyone who claims they can beat the market long term is lying, right? And if you look at every scam, you go back in time and you look at famous scams, right? Whether it was like the Bernie Madoff or the Enron thing, or, the junk bond thing, or you go back like even further, that's what you'll find every single time. It was greed driven by people who think, that they can outperform the market like long term. Steady returns of 20%, like year after year. It's like, that's what alerts people to the fact that these are scams, because that just isn't possible. It's like saying, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to flip a coin and I'm going to get heads every time. And I'm just going to do this forever, right? Now, some people might be lucky enough to get heads, say, 20 times in a row, right? The odds against that are astronomical. But they're going to sell you, oh, I always get heads. It's because I'm smart and I know exactly what to do. It's like, what do you mean you know what to do? This is random, right? And what was the last thing that tanked the international markets? It was things like the Ukraine conflict and things like, could you really predict that was coming? Being in the financial world? Like, of course you can, a day before it happens, but 2 years before it happens? Absolutely not. Right? Anyway, sorry, I'm going off on this thing. And anyway, Pavel is awesome. Anime Sucks is awesome. But look, if listen, for people like Pavel and stuff, if you don't agree with me or whatever, don't take my word for any of this. Don't take my opinion as some kind of authoritative thing. If you disagree, go do your own research. This is a perfect vehicle to go and learn about how finance works and some of the theory behind it. Like, not from some interested party, but like from, actual scientific study of finance, right? From textbooks that are used, that are taught in schools, like learn the theory behind it. And that's why you will learn that, like, if you could predict these markets exactly, they would collapse. Like, that's the whole point. No one will ever be able to do it. And if for anyone who makes any kind of gain in predicting things, the market adjusts so that it becomes just as unpredictable, right? So anyway, but the main thing is you love your boss. Speaking as a boss, a former boss, I like that. And we all know how lovable a lot of bosses are, right? Where did I leave off here? Zane Aldine says, hopefully I'll never give up no matter how overwhelming the outcome at a certain situation might be. Yes. That's what life is. Life is like, you get hard times. They just invariably occur, right? And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, the sun comes out for everyone all the time, but it's typical that you're going to go through hard times and then things will get better. You go through hard times and things will get better. That's just how it goes. What I can say is that when you're in the hard times, it sometimes feels in that moment that like everything is bad and everything is going to stay bad forever. And it isn't, but improving yourself always helps. Learning as much as you can about how things work helps. Right? Of the ways to do that, obviously applying yourself and trying to learn and putting in some effort helps, right? Experimentation helps, like trying to do something you've never done before. Try your hand at this, try your hand at that. That helps too. Getting like stepping out of your headspace. There's a lot of things out there and there's a lot of things that you can do because you're awesome. Even if you don't know it yet, and it doesn't feel like it, you are. And it's just a matter of applying yourself and giving it time. And if you don't feel like applying yourself right now, that's fine. Everyone encounters that at one time or another. Sometimes, many times, right? You're in that place. And that's fine. Don't beat yourself up about it. You just give it a little bit of time and you start to come out of it. Brian L. says, thank you, sir. We learn a lot about business world from you and life lessons too. Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad. And as I say, Brian, like if it's stuff that's important, like you wouldn't want to base big life-changing things on something I say off the cuff. But if it piques your interest or it gives you ideas, that's great. Go out and learn as much as you can about it. Learn about it from multiple sources, whatever it is, and then you're getting more of an objective view, right? That's the way to do stuff. Don't base major things on one source of information, right? Go out and try and corroborate it with other sources. Especially when on the internet, on YouTube and places like that, there's so much misinformation. Like when it comes to the stuff that I know about, I see so much misinformation. People just telling you stuff like it's fact when it isn't. They're wrong. They're objectively wrong, right? You know what I mean? So whatever idea you learn, go out and try and get some corroboration. You know what I mean? And the best thing that will corroborate anything is if you do it yourself, right? Try and find a way of, where you manage your risk, right? But if you do something and you see something with your own eyes and you do something with, your hands or whatever, and you observe the result, no one can tell you you're wrong or that can't happen or, whatever, you will be absolutely authoritative because you're not just repeating somebody else's, opinion or whatever, without any critical thinking. You're speaking from experience. Like, don't tell me, like when on my YouTube channel, when some people tell me, oh, you can't get a job that way or that doesn't work or something. And it's like, what are you talking about? It's like, I've done that repeatedly and I've gotten this result. So don't tell me it can't happen, and no, it's not because of something unique to me. It's like, no, absolutely not. This is true across. I've tried this in several different situations, several different locations, In some cases, I've done things in different industries, so don't tell me oh, it can't be done. It's like, here's a person who's never tried, who doesn't know anything about it, but they're telling you, oh, it doesn't work like that. I'm telling you, it doesn't work like that. It's impossible for that to work. Beware of that. It's a fallacy of thinking, Like someone who said earlier about oh, someone told me that a degree in economics is useless, or maybe I'm misquoting them, but that seemed to be the gist of it. That's a useless degree. Who would get that? It's like, no, it's not useless. In the hands of an incapable person, it could well be useless. Maybe it's harder to turn that into whatever your goal is, directly, but indirectly, maybe that's the keys to the kingdom. You know what I mean? And just because it fails for one person doesn't necessarily mean it's going to fail for you. You have to examine that and see if you've taken everything into account. Pavel says, I was rather trying to say that it seems to me it's not worth it to study economics so deeply to the point of master's or PhD. Rather, experience is essential in this, it seems to me. Okay. Pavel says, I just read a book from Peter Lynch, and there's this interesting part how he tells about amateur clubs that manage to beat the market repeatedly compared to many experts that often do not make it. Bullshit. It's just interesting. Okay, sure. Well, look, like I've said, it is possible to beat the market in the short term. Yes, people get lucky. People make guesses that turn out to be right. People have insider information, maybe more nefarious things, but nobody beats it long term. They just don't, because that undermines the entire theory behind it. Point to me and give me an example of someone or something that's beat the market repeatedly on demand over and over for the long term. And by long term, let's say greater than, 5 to 10 years, something like that. Like, first of all, they would own all the money in the world if that were true. Okay. Like, you know what I'm saying? They just keep winning and winning and win. It's like if you won the lottery over and over and over again, every time you played it, you won the jackpot. Oh, look, another jackpot. Oh, look, another jackpot, right? Now, can you win the jackpot 3 times in a row and then tell everyone, hey, I can beat the system? Yes, you can. But can you keep going like that? The answer is no, right? Not with legitimate means. You can give the illusion of doing it if it's a scam. That's what happened with things like Enron or the junk bond scandal or Bernie Madoff. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't exist, you know? Now, I'm not here to argue with anyone, but go, I mean, if you don't believe me, go and talk to people with PhDs in finance and see what they say. I don't have a PhD in finance. I got a master's degree, but they know more than me. They've pushed forward the boundaries of human knowledge in that area. See what they say, And, when there isn't a vested interest for them to say a certain thing, right? They're not paid to say one thing or whatever, that's not an issue. I'm just saying, there wouldn't be a market if someone was in it that had it all solved, right? And they won every single time at the expense of others. It just wouldn't work. Yeah, it is interesting. It's interesting because it's the dream. And everyone is so thirsty for, oh no, there's a simple formula to help you, say, win the lottery every time. Have you played to win every single time you can win, right? I've heard all kinds of BS over the years. I've heard the rich dad, poor dad stuff where it's like, let's give our amateur take on the world of finance where we completely ignore the concept of risk. Let's just assume that the price always goes up and that there's no risk of default. Yes, if you followed this simple formula, you would win every time, right? Yeah, I agree. In that imaginary world, that would work. And there are some people that have done that when the economy just was on a upward march and they've cleaned up. But what happens eventually? It goes down, right? And that's when they're screwed because they put all their money into this thing and then they've lost it all, right? You see, these things have a way of balancing out if you're not doing it properly. Okay. Well, anyway, anime sucks. Listen. And the thing about saying, oh, this is good or that's bad, remember, it could be good for one person, it could be bad for another, right? I had a cousin, a family member, who had a career going. She had a very successful career going in one area, technical area. Her whole immediate family was very proud of her, blah, blah. And one day she just announced, I want to change careers. I'm not happy in this job that other people would kill for. I'm not happy. And I want to go back to school and learn to be a psychologist. And so she left her career, was under some personal challenges too, and family challenges and all this kind of stuff. And then went back and said, I want to study psychology and be a marriage counselor. And my whole family, or the ones that I knew of, thought she was absolutely insane. But she did that, struggled for a bit, eventually got a PhD in it, eventually opened her own practice, and now she's cleaning up, Now, if someone said to me, one of my kids or something said to me, oh, I want to do this, I want to not go down this career path, but I want to go on this very risky thing that very few people succeed at, I don't know how I'd feel about that. If they said, I want to take a degree in philosophy and get a PhD in philosophy and then just be paid to think all day or something, I don't know how I'd feel about that. You know what I'm saying? But just because some other people fail at it doesn't mean that you necessarily will fail. It means that the bar is raised quite a bit, but doesn't necessarily mean that you'll fail. It depends on who you are. It depends on what your goals are. You know what I mean? And it depends on what you're working with and what you're prepared to do for it. So, there's a lot of factors there. Pavel, do you think those that have managed to beat it repeatedly have made it thanks to inside information or anything similar? Well, by definition, if you've done it long term, there's something going on. Okay, listen, I don't want to argue with anybody about this anymore. That just like learn finance, okay? Go and learn about this stuff, how it works, okay? But it's the holy grail of like, oh, I've beat the system. It's the same in the world of gambling, by the way, which is also kind of the similar principle. It's like, oh, I've learned to beat the system. Everyone loves to hear that, right? And it's always, always fake, at least long term. People can get lucky. People can do things that work for a little while. They can take advantage of a thing that's going on. That's what arbitrage opportunities are, right? There are things short term, right? Which is like sort of risk-free returns, right? Because of like the equivalent of like a rounding error in the system kind of thing, right? For those of you who don't know, and I'm sure nobody cares about this, but I'll say it anyway. Like, for example, the most simplest example I know of an arbitrage opportunity is, let's say you're playing the FX market, like foreign currency, and you want to convert, I don't know, Canadian dollars into American dollars. Let's say you say, okay, 2 Canadian dollars is 1 American dollar, right? 2-to-1 exchange, right? But you find that where the foreign exchange markets closed at the end of the day and the prices are frozen for like 16 hours or whatever it is, okay, you find that, okay, you can convert 2 Canadian dollars to 1 American dollar. But if you convert 2 Canadian dollars into 3 British pounds, okay, which then convert into 1.5 American dollars, that's an arbitrage opportunity, right? Because you go one route, you make $1, like 1-to-1, but you go another route, you go here to here to here, is like $1.50, right? So what you would do is you take all your money, you convert it into this currency, and then back into this, like you go the other route, back into that currency, and you just magically turn $100 into $150, right? Just by doing that transaction over and over again, right? So you do another $150 and another $150, you're like creating money from nothing just by like an accounting error, right? See, in a perfect world, you would convert one currency into another. It doesn't matter which way you get to American dollars, it should all work out, right? But because these things aren't perfect sometimes, you get these arbitrage opportunities. So yes, you can like beat the market with the equivalent of things like this, right? It's certainly a thing. Or, insider trading, or there's nothing underhanded going on. You just make a correct prediction, right? I predict that the price of corn will go up, and you happen to be right. Every Tuesday it goes up. You happen to be right for 3 Tuesdays. But sooner or later, that won't keep happening, right? If it was a thing, everyone else jumps on board, right? They start doing the same thing. They negate your advantage, right? That's the biggest mechanism that prevents this. And you get investors that intentionally look at how other people are doing. And they say, oh, wait a minute. If we analyze all the players, we notice that this person, they're making insane profits. And you go, oh, well, what are they doing? Oh, they seem to be doing this. Okay, I'll do that too, right? So then you're piggybacking your investments along with theirs so that whatever they make, you make because you're doing the same thing. And then the whole thing just cancels out. If everyone ends up doing that, you don't just create money from nothing, right? So there's all kinds of mechanisms by which this thing self-corrects, right? So you'll never beat it long term. Okay, anyway. But go and prove me wrong. Go and give me an example of people doing it long term. Okay, blah, 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 blah. I like the stream title. If an organization is soliciting the public to spend 69 minutes applying for a job, the least they can do is keep people. Well, that's entitlement. Let's analyze what you said here. If they're asking me to do this, then they should do, why? Why should they do that? Because you think they should? That's like a difference in perspective. You think they should, they obviously disagree, and they don't, right? All I'm saying is that I'm calling it out for what it is. It's highly unprofessional. It's ridiculous. And those companies are hurting themselves because they're putting out all this negative goodwill. here is a HR employee, like a recruiter, and they're representing their organization, and they are ghosting people. They are doing putting all kinds of bad stuff out there, turning people off, where you have to come and you feel this tall because you're between jobs and you're like essentially on your knees begging for a job. And these people, not only do they do things like ghosting you, they are disrespectful and rude to you in other ways too. And on top of that, they can be very incompetent. That's been my experience being on the receiving end of this as a candidate many years ago. That was my consistent experience. Disrespect and incompetence. That's what I was met with almost all the recruiters I dealt with. Now, later on in my career, I met some executive recruiters, and I see that there's actually some very talented people in there that are actually doing things right. They're trying to behave in a very professional way, blah, blah, blah. But there are still a hell of a lot of bad ones, and that's what a lot of people encounter. And it surprises me that those organizations are allowing these employees of theirs to go and put out such negative goodwill, to the public, because candidates are part of the public, right? They're hurting themselves. And I've heard of stories where candidates, have been disrespected, or they had a very unpleasant experience with a recruiter. And, it's inspired them to A, never work for that organization, B, go work for their competitor and actively work against them because they got a chip on their shoulder about some jackass that they had to deal with years earlier, You know what I mean? I've encountered people like that have told me all about it, and they've told me what they've done. And these people end up being managers, 20 years later and stuff, and they still got a chip on their shoulder, Especially if that bad employer that had the bad recruiter, they have like issues with their culture. They're very arrogant as a group, or they're, very, like there's problems with their culture. So yeah. Well, it looks like I managed to kill the live stream dead talking about finance. Anyway, there are 26 of you guys here. Get in the chat. Let me know what you're dealing with. But ghosting is something that I want to talk about. And I know that happens to a lot of people. If anyone has any stories about being ghosted, I'd like to work from that if you do. It's like the reason why recruiters ghost candidates. There's a couple of things going on there. First of all, they claim, and with some truth, that they deal with a huge volume of candidates. And so if they were to get back to every candidate, who didn't get selected, which is like a huge volume of communication, right? They would have to do, it would be excessive. They wouldn't be able to do it. It wouldn't be practical, right? And the way they operate, the way they have to operate for the amount of money they're paid for doing different things and the different contracts they have, depending on how they're compensated, a lot of the times it doesn't make sense. If you were to send even an automatic email to people that don't get it, I don't know why I'm defending them here, but I'm just saying sometimes it's justified. But in that case, the courteous thing to do, the professional thing to do would be to say in advance, look, if it's a yes, we will contact you over this channel by this date. That's when you will hear from us over, email or you'll get a phone call or whatever, if it's a yes. Now, if you haven't heard from us by that time, okay, it's a no. We may not send out a specific, no communication, but if you haven't heard from us by this date, that's pretty much what it means. So if that's the case, we encourage you to apply for, another position, something like that, right? That would be the more courteous thing to do. If you can't respond to people, at the very least, you're trying to be clear about what's going on. Okay. The second thing that's part of this is that, how can I put this, without being completely rude? There's a certain protocol when you're talking to people in a business environment, right? When you're networking, when you're contacting people, and that is how a lot of things operate. If it's a yes, we will pursue it. If it's a no, you can just assume that our silence means a no. We will contact you if we decide to pursue the idea. You make a pitch, and if we are intrigued by it and we want to pursue it, we will get back to you. If you make a pitch and then you hear nothing, that's just what a no looks like. That is the normal protocol, in many different circles when you're dealing with business relationships. That's just how it goes. Like, think of like Hollywood, like how many times, have they talked about, you audition for all these, if you're an actor or a director, whatever, you audition for all these things. If you're a script writer, you do like pitches and you submit, treatment, whatever the terminology is, like to put yourself forward for different jobs, right? And they're not like, it's not like a permanent employment. It's like, it's all contract work. Everything is always contract work in, say, the movie industry, right? And the idea is that people get back to you if they want to pursue it, if they see something in it. Let's take it further. If you don't hear from them, you just assume it's a no and you move on, right? But that's more like understood in that industry, right? It works the same way in the world of job search. The problem is that most candidates, especially if they're young, especially if they're relatively inexperienced, they don't understand this language, right? If I don't hear anything, that means a no, right? And so, number one, their behavior changes. They, instead of like applying for more jobs, they're still waiting to hear back on this one. So they stop their job search and they sit by the phone, and then they get angrier and angrier and more frustrated. And then they try and follow up with the company. Hey, I sent in my application, can someone give me an update? Where are we with that? And then they hear nothing, which once again means it's a no, but they don't understand that language, right? So then they get depressed, and then they get angry, and you know what I'm saying? Like, the problem is that they're not really speaking the same language as the recruiters, right? Now, I'm not defending the recruiters. The recruiters behave in a very unprofessional, incompetent, disrespectful way, especially when they know that most job seekers don't understand this language. Do you think the recruiter will explain that? That would be the professional and courteous thing to do, but no, they don't, right? They don't. So they're contributing to the problem. They're exacerbating it, right? You know what I mean? So there's a couple of things going on. One is that, it is rude in itself. Number two, the participants, like namely the candidates, don't understand the protocol here, and no one has bothered to inform them, right? Some candidates do, the more tuned in ones. Usually people in sales will get this instantly because it's exactly the same process as the sales process, right? And they won't go through the emotional roller coaster that other people may, right? Because they understand this game. It's a numbers game. More on that in a bit. Anime Sucks says, I'm still here. I love listening to your... Well, thank you. Thank you. That's very flattering. I'm glad you're getting something out of this. Feel free to ask specific questions. That's what I'm looking for. That and stories. Alpesh says, we will get back to you from HR is more rude. Yeah, well, it's perceived as being rude, but you see, in their language, and once again, I'm not defending them, I'm just pointing this out. In their language, we will get back to you translates to we will never get back to you because it's a no, right? I told a story, I don't know, at some point in the past where I played this game with a recruiter in reverse, where they offered me a job and somebody had verbally said, like, it pays X amount or something. And then I got like I think what happened was they contacted me and they said, like, congratulations, we pick you, we're making you an offer. Here's the offer. You receive it. And I looked at it and it was for X minus 10% or 5% or whatever the hell it was. And I said, okay, well, thank you very much. I'm very flattered, and that's very nice of you to believe in me to such a degree that you've sent me this offer. I will think about it, and then, I'll get back to you. And I think, yeah, okay, now I remember. So this was like at the 11th hour. If this job was to start, it would be to start like very soon, like the next day or in a couple of days or something. So they didn't have a lot of time. They waited right to the 11th hour and then gave me an offer at the last minute. And I basically said no. I said, and I said like, well, I was told that it pays X. I was promised this amount. So that's what I'm going to hold out for. And then, of course, you get this BS about, well, the way we do things is this is how we pay people. It's like, okay, great. Thank you very much for explaining that to me. I'll get back to you. And then the recruiter went, wait. Okay, let me see what I can do. Right? Because they know what that means. It means no. Right? How can I make this any plainer? Right? But listen, when two people talk to each other, try to imagine diplomats, okay? The diplomat from Turkey, the ambassador from Turkey is talking to the ambassador from, Southern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, right? Now, is one ambassador who represents their entire country going to say, no, Of course they're not. That's very rude, right? So they talk in this special language of diplomacy where they've got a big smile on their face and they say, hey, my friend, I received your offer. Your offer, it was very detailed, and it really underscores our profound desire to work together, our two countries, you and I, shoulder to shoulder. I hope we will continue to do that in the future the way we always have, this kind of thing, right? And then they'll say, we are looking forward to exploring how we can do this, in the future, which translates to no, right? They're not going to say it explicitly. So this is how recruiters are communicating to you, right? They're using this language, and ghosting, I hate to say it, is kind of part of that, right? Where the absence of communique, that's a no. That's what it means. That's what the language means. You suddenly don't respond when you're expecting to. We know what that means, right? The problem is they haven't made this clear. Marie-France says, ghosting a candidate after the third interview is ridiculous and very unprofessional after building rapport with all of them. I mean, hiring manager and executive. Yes. So what's going on? I agree with you. So what's going on the other side is that they think that that's perfectly acceptable because they think that this language that they're using is obvious. It's like, oh, you emailed me and I did not respond? That's kind of funny. Every single time you've emailed me, I've responded within a day. So now you email me and I don't respond? Oh, it's been 2 days? I think I'm being pretty clear of what's going on here. I mean, you really think if it was a yes, I would wait now all of a sudden when the stakes are high and the pressure is on, I would not respond to you? You really think that you could interpret that as like, you don't understand what it means? That's what's going on the other side of the table, right? It's part of the culture where they think that language is clear. And it is clear in a lot of circles. But unfortunately, it's not clear to younger candidates, to less experienced candidates, or candidates in certain places and, what's the word I'm looking for? Certain candidates, right? Because this is sort of a higher level language that they're using. And I'm not justifying. They initiate new recruiters. Like if you're 21 years old, you've got a certificate in HR, you get your first job and you're a recruiter, you're assisting on a team that hires people or whatever. They initiate you into that. They tell you like, this is how we operate. You would not get back to this person, but you get back to this person, right? It's pretty clear. And it's also convenient for them because it's less work, right? I think they rely on that too much, and that's bad. I also think they intentionally don't explain their language. That's bad. But what you've got to do, you see, you can't influence them. All you can influence is yourself. You only have control over yourself. So knowing this and knowing this is the game they're playing and the language they're using, okay, that triggers certain behavior in you. Do you stop your job search? Do you put it on hold while you wait by the phone? No. No, you don't. Maybe they're off discussing it and thinking it over, but maybe not. Maybe it's a no. Until you hear a yes, you keep moving forward with what's in your own interest. So you actively pursue other opportunities, and you actively go for those full steam ahead until you hear anything back from these people, if ever. You know, you look out for yourself, knowing that this is how they operate. You do what's right for you. And hear it for what it is. It's a no, or at least it's a no right now. Who knows what's going on with them? Who cares? Keep moving forward. If they want to talk to you, you're happy to talk. But until then, you're proceeding full speed ahead. Alpesh says, after 3 rounds of interview, they ghosted me, and after follow-ups, didn't get any response. But after 3 months, they call me and say, you are selected, but I joined a new organ just 2 days ago. Yeah, and that's what you get for acting like that. Like, not you, them. Well, that's what they get for them acting like this, right? Hey, you didn't get back to me. What do you expect me to wait for the phone? Forget about it, It's like, you got to be kidding me, That's not what you do, nor is it what I do. If you're interested in employing me, let's talk. If you're not, then I'm moving forward, because you know what? Other people are interested in employing me, and I'm connecting with them. So first come, first serve, baby. You know what I'm saying? You are a highly talented, employable person, and you're engaged in the activity of putting feelers out to connect to the people that see your value, right? And there are a lot of them, and you've got a lot of work to do. So you know what? You don't have time for this kind of BS, right? If you don't want to talk to me, fine. I got people that do want to talk to me. That's the attitude you have to take, because it's true, right? I don't care who you are. You're highly employable. You got skills other people need. I don't care if your only talent is stacking boxes because you can barely tie your shoes. You are still employable. There are people out there, they got lots of warehouses, they got lots of boxes that need stacking, and they're looking for you, right? And you're on a quest to connect with them. So if you don't have a job for me, then get the hell out of my way, because I got people to see, right? Brian L. says, Bill is correct. Silence from recruiter means no. However, if they like the candidate, recruiter and hiring manager will chase you crazy. Yeah, exactly. You'll know when it's a yes, because they immediately get back to you and they immediately want to, bring you in for another interview or something, right? There's like now time pressure, right? It's pretty obvious, right? Now, sometimes maybe you're not their number one choice. And it's usually a total crapshoot. Like I said in a recent video that I shot, but I didn't put out yet, I think, it's like an eeny, meeny, miny, mo type situation. They talked to 10 candidates in person. 9 of the 10 they would have, loved to employ. But they can only hire 1. So, depending who was in the meeting, oh, I like this person. Oh, the other person likes another candidate. So whatever, you kind of, I'll tell you what, I gave you the last one. Okay, you give me this one. We'll go with my candidate. It's not based on anything. It's just an eeny, meeny, miny, mo thing. So they call a person, and maybe that person, they give them the runaround over money or something like that. So they go, okay, well, that's too rich for my blood. We'll get back to you, right? Of course, they never do. And then they go to their number 2 choice, which was you. And they say, hey, come on in. We pick you, and we want to bring you in for an interview just to sort of finalize the offer, whatever. right? So maybe it took them 2 months, but now they're back and they're excited about talking to you. Now, if you're still free, sure. If you've already started another job like Alpesh, you haven't done anything wrong. You did the right thing. You moved on. You could grow cobwebs from your face waiting for these people to act and to get back to you, which they never will. You know this. So you did the right thing. And I agree with Brian. That's the behavior, Mary France says, thank you, Bill. You're welcome. I needed to hear all of this. Thank you. Well, I'm glad. I thought I was being a little too rude and forceful about it, but thank you. I'm trying to push myself to be a little more open. Like, it's not a personality thing. It's just that, as an ex-CEO, there's a reason why you don't see ex-CEOs on YouTube, really. You can't talk about so many different things. So, I always worry that I get like ex-employees and things like watching this stuff. And I know that they don't care about this, but so I'm trying to kind of say, it's okay. You can like say what you think about different things. So thanks for the feedback. Yeah, it is bad, but that's problem number one. Problem number one, like I said, is they're speaking their own language that a lot of candidates just don't understand. So because you don't understand the language, you don't understand what's going on with them. And that leads to anger, it leads to frustration, it leads to feeling like you're doing something wrong, or you feel like the process is hopeless because you don't understand it. It's not going the way you want, but you don't know why. You question yourself, right? Does any of this sound familiar? This is the problem, right? Once you realize what's going on the other side of the table, behind closed doors, where you don't hear about how these decisions are made and, all this kind of stuff, let me tell you, it's encouraging knowing that, because then you first of all realize that, you're not doing anything wrong. That's the first thing. Second thing is you lose your fear of because you're so nervous about I don't know what they're basing their decision on. So I'm worried about everything. Was it the way I dressed? Was it me mentioning this thing in my past? What is it that, that's leading to nobody offering me a job? Right. You lose your fear of that because you realize, well, it's none of that stuff is not a problem. It's a numbers game, and beyond a few basic checks you can do on what you're doing, things like mock interviews with, a friend or family member, right? Basic things like that, like learning the answers to common job interview questions, stuff like that. Get a variety of opinions. Don't just listen to me. Listen to a lot of people. They'll give you different perspectives on things. I'd like to think I'm one of the better ones, but get the recruiter's perspective, what they say, is a good answer or not. See if that rings true. Right? Now, sometimes people can have ulterior motives for saying different things, right? They might have a conflict of interest. So just be aware of that. But get different perspectives and try and learn about as much as you can what's going on the other side. And you know what I mean? And then put it to the test. Don't just take someone's word for it. Don't take my word for it. Don't take anyone's word for it. Go and verify it. Go and try things and say, okay, if that theory is correct, then I should get this result. If it's not correct, I'll get a different result, right? Try these things. And for God's sake, open your mind to the world of networking. That's how most people get jobs. If you need to get a job, you can't afford, in my opinion, to just close your mind off and say, that's all about, kissing ass and, being slimy and being two-faced and, where you don't deserve the job, but you're given it. I don't want any part of that. It's like, no, that's not what it is at all. And if that's what you think, I can tell you haven't done any of this because you're misunderstanding what it is. That's not what it is. If you were to reach out to a company, you don't know anyone there, but you can find people from that company on LinkedIn and you contact them and you say, hey, if ever you're looking for an accountant, I'm a great accountant. I specialize in this. I'd love to work for you guys because I know that you guys do this and you live I live very close to you. If ever you're looking, please let me know. Now, is that slimy? Is that favoritism? Is that like dishonest? No. If a boss says, we don't have a vacancy right now, but we may have one in a month. I have someone that's retiring and I can't post their job now or anything, but because they're still here, but we may have a vacancy. Would you be interested in coming in and just having a chat with me? Is that like favoritism? Is that dishonesty? You know what I mean? Like, is that a bunch of slimy salesperson type activity that is dishonest and unethical? No, of course not. What would you call that? It's called networking. What else would you call it? Like you're connecting with people, right? They've invited you in to say, hey, let's have a chat, let's see if, what you can do is kind of fits with what maybe I'm looking for, right? So it's not this horrible thing that some people seem to think it is. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, open your mind to doing some of this. If you know what to say and you know who to talk to and how to do it, if you're no good on the phone and you're no good in person, but you can send a message, a very nicely formatted, well-written short note over LinkedIn or email or something. You're capable of doing that, right? You can summon up all these opportunities that supplement what opportunities you might get by applying to posted jobs, right? So open your mind to this. That I know I sound like a broken record. I always say this, but it's so true. Alpesh says, but to be honest, there are companies who communicate very well. Even if they didn't select me from a pool of 150, they communicated with the rejection reason. Yeah, I got rejected for a CEO job many years ago. They were talking to obviously several people, and as you can imagine, you put yourself forward for a lot of jobs and you don't get most of them. But this was through a recruitment and selection firm in my hometown. They're the best recruitment selection firm in the city. They have the highest profile, and they do all the like executive level stuff. So board level, executive, C-level stuff, and like big organizations, not just like little tin pot things, but massive organizations. They'll hire the CEO and they'll take the lead on that. So they were like, and I put myself forward for a CEO job. I got down to like probably the final three. You don't really know, but I believe I was the final three, and I didn't get it. And I remember this stands out for me years later because they took me aside and they gave me full and complete feedback. And when I walked out of there that day, out of their offices, I felt great. Because the answer was a no. I wouldn't have thought this possible without actually going through it. The answer was no. We didn't hire you. You were not selected. Sorry, the process is over for you. But they told me in such a way that I completely understood. It made perfect sense. It kind of stroked my ego. They said, you have this, you got this. I mean, all that's fantastic. They were really looking forward to this. They were very impressed with this, blah, blah, blah. All these things. And then they explain the reason for the rejection. And it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I understand completely. And they're absolutely right. I don't actually have that. You read things absolutely correctly on that. And I felt good. I got a no and I felt like really, really good. As I said, I wouldn't have thought that would be possible, but that's how good some of these people are, at a high level. The ones that really know what they're doing. It's absolutely amazing. I envy the ability to do that. Like, imagine the people skills to be able to do something like that, to make the other person walk away and feel like pretty good, Yeah, they exist. So some companies really have their stuff together. Like, it's not all bad news. Occasionally you get like really good employers, and those are the ones you really want to try and work for, right? You know, and you get a glimpse into this when you see their hiring process, right? It's very rare in my experience. You get like a really good company that has a really crappy, officious, incompetent, rude hiring process, you know? There are exceptions to everything, but I still haven't really seen that yet. Mary France says, no, you are educating us. They do not understand how they hurt our feelings, but by you teaching us the other side is priceless. We know how they think about us and we move on to our job search. Yes. Yeah. It's all an illusion. You know, this feeling of inferiority you get when you're searching for a job, you know, where you feel like, oh my God, I'm unemployable. Oh my God, I have no real skills. Oh no, they might ask me, what could I bring to the table? And I honestly don't know what to say. You know, it's all an illusion, right? You're highly valuable. You're hireable. You can do a lot of, you know, useful things. It's not just one thing you can do. You can do many, many useful things that are a piece of a business operation. You know, the business operation does something to make money. It generates money. That's what it does. And in order to do that, you have to do many different tasks, and you can do some of those. You could probably do many more than you think. You know, if someone actually believed in you and said like, hey, you know, you're awesome. I know you can do this. Here, let me train you in how to do that, right? You would probably rise to the challenge because these people are so nice. And then if they gave you really good training, you would probably tack on like really good skills, and you'd believe in yourself and, you know, all the rest of it. You'd end up being far more skilled than you thought you could be. You know, you had that in you the whole time, right? You know, that's the reality. These people like to think that, like I said, only a hand-picked elite few can do like the job that they're hiring for. That's what they think. The reality is that it's not, in the case of recruiters, the reality is that it's not nearly as exclusive as that. Most people could probably do that job. You know, they'd be able to do a half decent job at it, especially if they got a little bit of training. You know, when you onboarded them, you gave them a little bit of training, right? And they were a little bit patient with you, and they were, you know, personable and all the rest of it. They could actually get you to do the job, and you'd be okay at it. Even if it took you 6 months to get over the learning curve, because there's a lot to know, you could probably do a good job of it, right? This is what history has taught us. Look at like after World War II. I've commented on this before. Look at America. You know, land of opportunity, especially after World War II. They were rich. Not necessarily because any, you know, particular thing they were doing, no offense to Americans, but simply by virtue of the fact that they were in a privileged position. They were, their land was not invaded, and they were in a position to sell weapons and supplies to pretty much almost every other country, at least on the Allied side, right? So they made a killing and they absolutely cleaned up. Other countries, not only did they spend their money on weapons and supplies, so they were broke, but then a lot of them got their territory completely destroyed, right? So, you know, so America had a clear advantage. All the world's wealth gravitated to the United States. It had already got a big chunk of it before, but it really just came home to roost at the end of World War II. And there was so much opportunity. There was so much talent in the US because they had been the world's factory. Kind of what China is becoming now. They're the world's factory, right? And coincidentally, you had less formal education back then, like the world over. So you got like, you know, all these people that like, you know, they didn't have a lot of formal education in various things, but they ended up getting these amazing jobs, right? You know, when they were rebuilding Germany, there's a famous story in a documentary where somebody says, you know, like he meets somebody on the street who's wearing a tie. and says to them, hey, you're wearing a tie, so therefore you must maybe, hopefully, have some level of education. Can you run this factory, or something, or be the mayor of this town, I think it was, like just tremendous opportunity, right? Afterwards. Did those people go through this hiring process to get those jobs? Absolutely not. But yet, collectively, they were responsible for, like, certainly in the United States, they were responsible for like leading the world in, in the Cold War and in the space race, and like all these amazing achievements they did, right? They didn't have anything like these hiring practices back then. These hiring practices sort of were born out of that once the labor pool started to dry off and there weren't these amazing jobs everywhere, in the 70s into the 80s, when things started to decline, right? So then you got like, now we're going to scrutinize people more. And then we're going to pretend that you need like all this extra education now to do this job, forgetting, of course, by the fact that these people have been doing this job for years without any of that education or any of that training. But now, you need it now, right? So, you know what I mean? It's like it leads people to believe that they're just not qualified to do a lot of things, right? Obviously, certain things you can't fake. You can't do open heart surgery when you don't have a medical degree. I'm sorry, right? You can't build a bridge when you don't have a degree in engineering. It's just, okay, you can't fake it. But for a lot of other things, it's not the rocket science that recruiters and hiring managers make it out to be. It just isn't. Okay, this is a weird live stream. I'm talking about like everything under the sun except for kind of what I set out to do. I'm just going to read the last few comments here. If you have anything else, write them now because I'll be winding this down soon. Margarita says, I really appreciate all the information, but sometimes it's just really hard to understand when you feel good about it and get only no's, or you don't hear about it, or reasons of no's. Yeah, listen, Margarita, this may be helpful to you depending on what situation you're in. In the description box of this video, there are a bunch of links to videos and things I've done. One of them is called The Hidden Job Market. Go and watch that video. Okay, that might be helpful to you. Okay, you're absolutely right. But what the thing is, you're going in, the jobs that are posted, there are only about 20% of all the jobs that are out there. And those jobs, those 20% that are posted, they're getting something like 80% of all the job seekers are competing for them, right? So it's very, very tough to get those. When you apply to a job that receives 800 applications, it's like you're having to go head to head with 800 people and stand out from 800 people. Not very easy to do, right? The way to succeed is to go around that. Put yourself forward for the other 80% of jobs that are not posted. And when you go in, you're competing against one or two other people max. The odds of getting those are a lot better. And as a bonus, those tend to be the more desirable jobs. So that's how you win. Okay. You don't necessarily win by just playing this particular game. You go around some of these obstacles. Okay. I've talked about that extensively. If you really want the full meal deal, if you check out those videos, you still want more, check that out. There's a link to that too. Okay. That's where I put all my advice about how this stuff works. Basically, I packaged, a part of that course is me packaging how I built my consulting business. The networking component that I teach in there is like what I did. Now, I'm a technical introvert. I don't socialize with people I don't know for fun. I've had to do that as a necessity as part of my job as a manager, and then later as an executive, but that's not my idea of a good time. There are a lot of people out there like me. A lot of you guys are like me. You're introverted, you're technical, dealing with people is kind of alien and foreign. That's why you don't understand how this process works. If you see what I'm saying, right? So if you're interested and if you're looking for something like that, check that out. And Alpesh says, fun story, rejection is that I'm overqualified for the job and they said you won't work here for more than a year. Tata Group company, I've never heard of them, one of the biggest in the field. First and last rejection. Yeah, that's what overqualified means. It doesn't mean overqualified. It just means that they predict based on a stereotype that you will ask for more money and you will not be happy with how much the compensation is, right? Whether or not that's true, that's what they're assuming about you. And then they're basing their decision based on that assumption, right? Now, sometimes it's true, right? Other times it's not. But that's what job interviews are. They don't want to take the time to get to know you. They want to just make assumptions about you based on stereotypes, right? Because they don't want to put in the time to get to know you, right? That's another reason why this process is completely flawed. And people who study these things have known about this for years. They know that it's a very poorly performing process. It does not do a great job of finding the best candidate or surfacing the best candidate for a position. It really doesn't. Okay, so we've reached the end of the chat. So thank you to everybody here. I see there's 24 people here. You guys are awesome. Never forget that. You are trying to improve yourself. You're trying to learn about how stuff works. You know, you keep doing that. One of these days, you're going to absolutely crush it. Get your information from a variety of sources. Don't be afraid to try things. Manage your risk, but try things. Step outside of yourself in a controlled kind of way. And, learn as much as you can and keep on keeping on. And don't let any of the recruiters or any of the clowns that you meet in the recruitment and selection profession get you down. You are highly qualified. There's a lot of things waiting for you right now out there is a perfect job for you. And an employer is desperately trying to find someone exactly like you to do this job. And you're over here, like they're over here, and you're over here, okay? But you're just not connected to each other, and that's the problem. You're embarking on a project to try and connect with the people that are looking right now, that are out there, and they're looking now for exactly what you have. Okay? They exist and they're there. And that's to everybody who's watching this right now. Okay? So that's what the challenge is, right? There's no question of like, oh, they don't exist. And there's no question of like, you could never convince them that, you have what they're looking for, right? They can recognize it when they see it. Okay, but that's the reality. I will be back next week. I do live streaming on Mondays and Wednesdays. So hopefully you appreciated this. If you have any feedback on what I should talk about, what subjects to cover, let me know, because if my rambling sort of thing wasn't a giveaway, I don't know what people want to discuss, like what you can really be honest about that it's hard to get honesty about when it comes to the world of job search and careers. I feel there's a lot of stuff in there, but I want to pick things that people will show up for. So let me know and I will cover it. Okay.